Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into, well, architecture and water features. We're talking about that pavilion concept, the one with the water cascading down those really sleek arches.
It's a really interesting concept, actually. Like the way it uses water, it's not just visually striking. It makes you think about how buildings can interact with the environment, but in a different way.
Right. Okay, so picture this. You've got these soaring arches, maybe stainless steel so they catch the light, and then water just flowing down them like a shimmery curtain, And it all goes right into this crystal clear pool. Total oasis in a concrete jungle vibes.
I can see that, yeah. And using those materials like the polished concrete and the stainless steel, it really gives it that modern feel. But then there's also the technical side of it to think about. Like those arches, I don't think they're built as one piece,
You're thinking prefabricated sections, like giant Lego for architects.
Exactly. It's like how they build bridges now, giant sections off-site, and then they piece them together. These arches could be built the same way, and that's really efficient.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But what about that water curtain, though? It looks so delicate, but I feel like, knowing me, I would walk through it and get completely soaked.
I doubt you'd get soaked. It's probably designed with like a series of nozzles or maybe even perforated pipes hidden inside the arches. They definitely need a pretty complex system of pumps and circulation, though, to draw water from the reflecting pool and have it cascade back down to keep that flow going.
So there's some serious engineering behind that visual, right? It's pretty spectacular. But what I think is really neat is how the whole design uses the water to like evoke this feeling of tranquility, especially with that contrast, between the solid arches and the water curtain.
Yeah, definitely. The fact that they used arches is interesting too. I mean, we see that a lot in modern architecture, this like yearning for the strength and timelessness that arches represent, Think about Roman aqueducts or big cathedral doorways, but then the way they're using the materials here and the water and light, that feels really innovative.
It's like they're taking something from history, but then making it new again. It really makes you wonder what the architect was going for.
Yeah.
Was it just an artistic thing? Or could this pavilion actually be used for something like practical?
Good question. I mean, it's definitely beautiful, this pavilion, but I don't know if I'd call it like a practical public space. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. I'm picturing trying to have a picnic under there, and suddenly it starts pouring rain. Not exactly the peaceful oasis I was hoping for.
Right. And when you think about it, there isn't any shelter from the elements, really. No seating or anything. It's not really inviting people to, come and hang out. Plus, think about the maintenance. Keeping all that water clean, no algae, making sure those pumps are working. That's got to be expensive.
And that makes me think about the sustainability aspect, too. With all that water and those pumps running all the time, it makes you wonder about the environmental impact.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a beautiful design, but to be really successful, it has to be sustainable, too, right?
So what are we thinking? Eco-friendly upgrades? Or is this pavilion going to be an environmental disaster?
Not necessarily. There are definitely ways to make it work. Like, imagine if they used a closed-loop system for the water. Rainwater collected from the roof, filtered, and then reused for the water curtain. That would minimize waste and be way better for the environment.
See, now, those are the kind of design ideas I like to hear. But those arches, though, they seem so huge. Wouldn't stainless steel be way too heavy for something like that?
Yeah, that's something to consider for sure. I mean, it's strong and all, but for a span that big, they might have to use something else, like reinforced concrete, maybe, or even combine different materials somehow.
A hybrid arch.
Yeah.
Is that even possible?
It's becoming more common, actually. It's all about finding that balance, right? Strength, looks, and of course, budget.
Because I have a feeling this whole thing is going to be very, very expensive.
Yeah, probably. With the materials, the engineering, the size of it all, it'll be a big investment for sure. But let's forget about the practical stuff for a minute. What do you think it would feel like to actually be there in that space?
Okay, so I'm imagining walking through those arches, and there's water all around, the sound of it, and then sunlight coming through the droplets, making these cool patterns.
It would really appeal to all your senses. The coolness of the water and the sound of it hitting the pool. It would be a really immersive experience.
Yeah, like you're stepping into a different world for a minute.
Yeah.
Little oasis right in the middle of everything.
That's what's so cool about architecture like this, I think. It can really, transport you to another place, even if it's just for a little bit.
But let's be real for a sec. Even a really beautiful oasis like this, it can't be cheap to build. We talked about the cost before, but maybe we should dive into that a little more.
Definitely. It's always a balancing act, right? When you
Yeah.
have a big, ambitious project, you have the artistic vision, but then there's also the budget. And people are always going to ask if it's, the best way to use resources.
Especially with so many other things that need funding, affordable housing, education, all that.
Exactly. I mean, it's a valid point, right? People are going to have opinions about how public money is spent, but you also got to think about the stuff you can't really put a price tag on, the benefits for the community, things like that.
You mean like the stuff that's harder to measure?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if this pavilion becomes like a landmark in the city or a place where people come together, something the community can be proud of? That's important too, even if it doesn't show up on a spreadsheet.
I see what you're saying. It's not just about the building itself. It's about what it represents and what it does for the people around it.
Exactly. It could even make people think differently about sustainable design or about how we use art in public spaces. Who knows?
So it's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
It starts with the design, but it goes way beyond that.
Right. And let's not forget, the simple fact that it's beautiful,
Yeah.
right? Don't we all need those spaces that make us feel something? Places that are peaceful and interesting and make you feel connected to something bigger.
Especially these days, when everything's so hectic and crazy.
Oh.
It could be a place to just escape from all that and breathe for a minute.
Exactly. And you never know. Maybe people will carry that feeling with them even after they leave. Maybe it'll inspire them to be a little more peaceful in their own lives, too.
That's a nice thought. So even with all the challenges like the cost and the logistics, there's also this potential for it to be something really special,
Totally. I mean, it makes you think, right? And it pushes the boundaries of what architecture can be. It reminds you of the power that a space can have.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives, isn't it? We get to explore these ideas and look at all sides of it and maybe even see things a little differently afterward.
Definitely. Sometimes the designs that make you think the most are the ones that challenge your assumptions and, make you wonder, what if?
And this one definitely does that. So what about you listeners? What are your thoughts on this pavilion? Does the artistic side outweigh the practical stuff? Head over to our social media and tell us what you think. Keep that conversation going. And whether you're an architecture buff or you just like cool design, keep those minds curious. Until next time.